Welcome to John Teaches Sean About His Brain, the podcast where I, Sean, embark on a journey to understand what's happening in my own head. Spoiler alert, I have no clue, but that's precisely why we're here. In each episode, I explore questions about the brain that I believe will resonate with all of us. Like, why can't I turn my brain off at 3 a.m.? Why my memory only works when it feels like it, and why my brain seems to betray me when I need it most. Listen, I'm not a scientist. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy looking to unravel the mysteries of my own mind. Fortunately, I happen to know a cognitive neuroscientist who is an expert in the brain, and I get to ask him all the questions I want. So, if you're curious, confused, or simply along for the ride, welcome. And hey, if you like what you hear, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, or whatever it is you do wherever you listen to podcasts. I don't know how the algorithms work. I just know that your support keeps this journey moving forward. And together, we might just discover something remarkable. This is John Teaches Sean About His Brain. Let's get started. Hi, John. It's good to see you.
Hey, Sean. Great seeing you.
What is on your mind this week?
Right before we came on and I logged in for the podcast, I had that moment where I went, oh, crap. I don't have a what's on my mind for this week. And
Okay.
the problem, I had several what's on my minds for this week. So this past week, during the week, because we record these a week apart, things will happen or something will come up and I'll think, oh, that'll be a good thing to talk about because that is something that catches my attention that I think about or that I research or look into something. And I go, that's what I'll use. And this past week I had something and I can't even remember what it is, but I had something, thought, okay, that's going to be a good one. And then something else happened and I thought, oh, that would be a good one too. And a third thing, like I had three and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to choose between these three. And right before I logged on, I was like, I can't remember any of the three. I don't remember what any of the three are. And they seemed important at the time, but I can't remember them.
Do you think then, or maybe you know, but is it too many options lead to not remembering, or is it something? What do you think happened?
Yeah, that's a good point. There's research around if you give people too many options,
That's what I was thinking
that
of.
messes
Yeah.
up their, yeah, it's harder for them to decide on stuff.
Yeah.
I think this one has to do with, with memory, there's encoding and storing and retrieval, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this had to do with encoding because if there's things going on that you're really stressed about or you're not, it might seem important for that moment and then it's quickly replaced with other things that are on your mind, then you can lose. It's not encoded properly. And I think this is an encoding error, if I were to guess. And I think it's because just lately, my emotions are running higher than normal out of frustration and being upset. And it's from my perception that the field of science is under attack right now. And so for me, being in science, that I if you would have asked me, let's say a year ago or 2 years ago, what if people were attacking science? I would go, so, I mean, science is science. It's like you can't kill science. It's not a movement. It's not a religion. It's not a political affiliation. It's just curiosity about how the world works. And people from all religions, all political affiliations from everywhere can join in to science. And it's about using a method and a structure and answering problems. And that it's not like you can squelch that. So if you would have asked me, I would have said, that's I'm not worried about that. but now that we're in a kind of a point in our country where it's our government that's the one that's attacking science and challenging science, now all of a sudden there's something more behind that than people being upset at science, because now it's funding is being taken away from research institutes. Universities are, the attempt is to dismantle universities and what they stand for, especially specific universities. I think community colleges are probably okay for now, and colleges and universities that don't have anything to do with research are probably okay for now.
I was just going to say the when you brought up community college, my assumption is they're not doing any or a lot of research. So what you're talking about is, as far as colleges go, they are the colleges that are associated with research, scientific
Yes.
study research.
Yeah, and not every college and university does that. And in fact, they're tiered. There's, tier one universities, tier two universities, as far as research, and that's the amount of
Mm-hmm.
research dollars that go to those different universities. And those are the ones that are really under attack right now. And it's, there's a lot of reasons and excuses made and reasons given for why these universities are under attack, that if you just listen to a reason to say something like, well, we want to make sure that money is actually going to research, we go, oh, that's actually a good thing. But those are those are that's like the guys that's put out front. I mean, I have colleagues that I've talked to that are like, we never dreamed that the world would turn this way. We've been on a research project. We're in year 4 out of 5 years. We've collected, we put so much energy and effort in, and all of a sudden our research is over. Like, we can't finish the question. We can't find that, we're so close. And then once you stop, it's basically like start over, start another 5-year project. And so,
But
so
that's
not,
because of, sorry, but that's because of funding. This particular example you're citing is, there's a team that you're aware of, that a colleague of yours that has done 4 years worth of research. They have a year left, and then the funding is gone. It's taken away from that project, and they're just done.
yeah. And I mean, they've got other
Wow.
projects that are
Okay.
planned that have also been stopped. And it's what you have to realize in universities, they're not for-profit universities. So when universities make discoveries about health, about cancer cures, about different things like that, you know, I think people have a misconception about what happens with that information and who gets it and all of that. Universities, individual researchers, they don't gain financially from that for the most part. I know there are some cases where if they're funded through a pharmaceutical company or something like that, there's different ways to do it. The universities and the professors that do that make their money on these research grants. So if you say, here's all my costs that are associated with this, but in order to do this research, I can't be in the classroom 5 days a week and spending all my time preparing lectures and grading papers, because then I don't have time to do research. So
Right.
instead, I'll teach 2 classes a semester instead of 5, and then we'll hire adjunct professors or whatever to teach those classes. So that salary is put for the adjunct is put into that grant to say, I need to free up my time to do this important research if my research is important enough. I mean, here's the
Yeah.
thing. So I say, hey, here's what I want to do. I need these adjunct people to fill in for me. I need this type of material and equipment. I already have, my EEG machine or whatever, but they're when you've used it so much, there's repairs that need to be made. So I need a, a little bit of money for repairs on that. I'm using university electricity and all this stuff. So the university has to get some money from this research, because I'm a professor. I don't have money. I can't
Hmm.
fund this research. So I've got to ask somebody for the research. And since really it happened in right around World War II is when America said to the whole world, we're doing research in America. If you want to be a scientist and you want to have your research funded, come to America. And since that time, something like 70% of all the Nobel Peace Prize in medicine and by all of these things have been awarded to people working in U.S. institutions, research institutions. We're like the model of the world when it comes to research and discoveries and breakthroughs. When you put the numbers up, it's crazy. And a lot of that research is not just because it's all done by Americans who are smart. We've opened the doors. There's people that come from other countries to be professors here so that they have the opportunity to do research. And so then you say, okay, I've got this research project and I need funding for these different indirect costs, and it's going to be this much money. I submit that to like the NIH or NSF or whatever federal funding source I'm looking at. And that goes in with 1,000 others, professors like me, who are trying to get those research dollars. And 950 of them are going to be turned down. It is extremely competitive. It is an extremely competitive process. So just because I'm a professor and I want to do research, the federal government isn't going to fund me. I've got to get in a pool and compete with everybody else to say, here's why my research matters and why it should be funded. And everybody's trying to do that. So now you're funding like the cream of the crop and the best projects, but then now those are getting cut off. And now it's like, no, we're not going to fund these because of, and I won't even get into the reasons. It doesn't matter, because the point is that the frustrating thing to me is research is being stopped, which is going to have a tremendous impact on, us in so many different ways. But I've told Casey, I've said it's more, I'm angry and frustrated because America's led for so long. But
Yeah.
science, it doesn't care. It doesn't care if it's carried out in America or in Europe or wherever. And I just saw last week that in front of the EU congressional hearing, they were standing up talking about now the door is open for us to return to being the leaders in the world in research, in medicine and science. If we had funding, we can attract scientists from the US right now, because research is being strangled and killed in America. They can come over here. And I don't, so I haven't talked personally to any of my colleagues, but I've heard stories of colleagues who are actually being recruited, and it's kind of like a headhunter calling you. Universities from other parts of the world are looking, saying, hey, we're in this area. Let's see who some of the top researchers are. Let's just give them a call and see if they would like to come work for us, and we'll give them a salary, and we're happy to fund research. That's a good place to put our money. So we're happy to fund research. So research is still going to be ongoing. It's just America may not be in the lead anymore. And that's okay, I guess. But that's, I think, part of my frustration.
Yeah.
And then I think what topped it off last week was when the MAHA report came out, which is Make America Healthier Again. And it was about
yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
RFK Jr. put it out. And I'm trying to think, it was Make America Healthy Again, something about children, making our children healthy, something like that. And it had so many different false claims in it. It had it cited sources that don't exist, so the links were dead. It took people's research that they did and misrepresented it to where those scientists are coming out saying that's not what our research showed. You're misrepresenting what our research shows. They brought in examples from what they call long ignored scientific sources, which are people writing articles that aren't scientists and don't understand science and haven't used science to make their claims, and they're giving them as much weight or more than the rigorous science that takes place. And I looked at that when I was reading it, and I thought, if any of my colleagues had done that in their position, or if I'd done that when I was in the university setting and have falsified so much stuff, I would have been fired immediately. My colleagues would be
Yeah.
fired immediately. You cannot practice like that. You are gone so fast when you falsify things like that and put out a document. And it's just like, oh, there's some formatting errors, but no, it's a really good report. No, it's not. It's false, and it's not even science, and it's false. And now you're recommending.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, but it's not a good report. It's the best health report that's ever been. I'm
It's
trying
ever
to
been
remember
written.
the quote. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some formatting issues, but other than that, it is the best. I don't think it said most comprehensive, but it is the best health report that's ever been put out.
Oh no, comprehensive is bad. It has to be. Yeah, it's just simple. It's the best. Yeah,
It's the
I
best.
don't know if you can. My water level just went up. You
Sorry, I didn't
said
mean to do that to you. I interrupted you mid sentence and then also just raised your water level.
can't you tell I'm
Sorry.
emotional right now, Sean? I'm
I
on the
can.
edge. You're about to push me over the edge.
I apologize.
No, but you're right. And I just think that these are our children, and people who aren't scientists. There's nothing wrong with not being a scientist. I'm glad that not everybody's a scientist. It gives, then it would be hard to find. I can't do anything else, so I definitely would be selling newspapers on a corner or something. But not everybody can be scientists, and that's okay. But that's why we have leaders that we can trust. That's why we have scientists that we can, and that's why the process is so rigorous, so that we can trust it. I mean, if you don't have an understanding, like the president of the State of the Union said that, part of the problem with research is they're studying transgendered mice, and there's no such thing as transgendered mice. If you knew anything about science, you would know that well, science and sociology or social constructs. Gender is a social construct. It's how you identify yourself, and we can't talk to mice yet, so we can't ask mice if they
How they
identify as
identify.
male or female
Yeah.
or whatever. It's
Yeah.
There's transgenic mice. It's about the genetics. You change the genetics in them for testing, and it's not that they're transgendered. And so it's just those misunderstandings that the bulk of the country miss, and they go, yeah, listen, they're studying transgendered mice, and it's like, no, and that's never corrected. Things get said, and there's so much being said so rapidly that there's no way to correct it all. So it's like a
Yeah.
barrage, it's like a tsunami of misinformation, and the scary part is it's coming from those in authority. And then that's why I'm just really, I've really struggled the last few weeks. But when this report came out, it was like almost like the last straw. And I did talk to a couple colleagues that said we'd be fired so fast. Like, you can't put out reports like that, and our government is. And then, I know I know this shouldn't matter as much, but we look pretty stupid around the world. We'd been leaders in medicine and in research, and to other countries, to other researchers in other countries, they actually have empathy for the researchers here. But then on
Yeah.
another level, they kind of enjoy when America's struggling like it is right now. It's like, it's kind of fun to see, because America's led in this for so long. They feel sorry
Yeah.
for the
That's the.
researchers, but maybe America deserves this for a little bit, put
But
them
we've
in
been on
there.
top of this particular field, from what you're
Yeah.
saying, for so long, and because we're all humans, no matter what country you live in, there's a little bit of you don't mind seeing the big person stumble a little bit.
Yeah,
But
and I should say that there's smart people in other countries, and there's great research going on in other countries. It's just we've always provided all the additional funding and the freedom to do research and pursue your own curiosity. And if it's something that's for the betterment of society, then the government will fund it. If it's not, then you can find other sources of funding. But it's also the universities that don't, like, clamp you down. Universities let you research whatever you want to research, and that's so attractive to some of the smartest people from other countries. So they come over here,
mhm.
and unfortunately, as immigrants, because they've got issues besides science to worry about, as for
Yeah,
but but it's not that only the Americans are smart. It's that we've always opened up the pocketbook to further our understanding of the world and medicine and health and those types of things. And now it's going to be somebody else.
So you said, I have a couple of questions you may not have the answers to, but I'm intrigued or interested. After World War II, so the message was put out, right, that we would fund research, we as a country, and so the federal government, I'm assuming, was somewhere the decision was made, we're going to throw money at research.
Yes, the decision was made in the federal government, and it was announced. And I mean, Einstein, Bohr, I mean, all the great physicists, most of them were German. There were some others too, but they were Europeans
Mm-hmm.
that came to the US. And so they worked in our universities, and then
Right.
our students started working with them, and they started learning and becoming, great figures. And they could have stayed, if they would have stayed in Germany and Austria, all the different countries they came from, then we wouldn't be the leaders right now. And we
Right.
had a leader that had foresight back then. And I hate to start in a history lesson and not even be able to name some of the names associated. I don't even know who all was responsible for this, but I just know that was put out. America said our universities are open for funding research, and we wanted the best and brightest minds from around the world to come here, and they did. And we led the world in research for
Right.
decades.
Around late 40s, early 50s, Congress, who controls our budget, legislated to spend a certain amount of money on research.
Yep.
And also, that you already mentioned this too, the universities gave the latitude to researchers to do research. And for the last however many years, since, let's call it late 40s, America has been at the forefront of research. But I don't mean, but I want to, because I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying. Because again, I'm not saying like America is the only country with researchers. All of the other smart researchers from everywhere in the world came here because of that, because we were willing to spend the money and give them the latitude to do the research they wanted to. And what you're saying right now is that currently that is being cut off, or at least I don't want to say strangled again, but I mean that idea is being diminished greatly in America.
Yeah, and people are leaving, and
Yeah.
and they're looking, to leave. They're wanting to start. A lot of other researchers and universities are wanting to start somewhere this coming fall of 2025. And I was reading an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education this last week that I don't remember the numbers, so I'm not even going to start to say them, but there had always been a certain number, like a small handful of people that would look for jobs abroad, because they have a job search database and some different things. So there's always a few. There's like a few that are kind of testing the waters. Are there jobs over in Europe? Are there jobs in Australia? Are there jobs in Asia where I could land? And they said that this spring, their systems are just overwhelmed with the number of researchers looking to find a place somewhere other than America. And I don't want this to come across as a political message, because I know that there are people who will say, "Oh, if so and so gets elected, I'm moving. I'm not going to live in America if they're the president."
I've heard that for every election, from both sides.
Election, both sides.
Yeah.
And the people that are looking to leave now have their research programs established in universities here. You don't leave from that. Once you have your research program established, that's where you retire from.
Yeah.
And those are the people that are looking to leave, not to make a political statement, but I can't research. I can't do my job anymore, because
right.
Yeah. And
how frustrating. So I was going to say that I'm going back to that really stuck out to me. I'm trying to, put myself in the shoes of a researcher who is on a 5-year program. You've gone through all of the stuff to get it approved financially. You said it's a pretty rigorous process to get funded, and there's all the other researchers, and I got funded. I got funding for a 5-year program, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 4 years in, and it ends. And the sense of leaving something like that unfinished, the idea that I could help, I don't know what the research is, but that I could help the world somehow, maybe
Mm-hmm.
with this research. Let me just pause and stop my rambling. I read something this morning, a study about the correlation, or not, maybe not the correlation, but that this 7-year study. They did 7 years of research to prove that aerobic exercise has a positive effect on cancer, on certain kinds of cancer. So in other words, they were able to prove through this research, if you do running, kayaking, I don't remember the list of things, but that reduced these cancers. But it took 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it took, again, how much money to do that research,
Yeah.
how much, all that to do that research. And now here's information that might affect someone getting cancer or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then imagine, it didn't happen in this case. Imagine you're 5 years into the 7-year program that could actually help to reduce cancer, and the funding is gone, and you never get to finish that project.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. It's not the right word,
but it's across the board. Like, I just saw that the Fulbright scholarships to go out to the brightest people, they go do research overseas and stuff. They get the 1 year, 2 year funding to go do research overseas in another university, and they send somebody here that like 40% of those who'd already been awarded their Fulbright for this fall, it was pulled back from them because the administration did a they did a find, like on your Microsoft Word, find this
search
word,
and replace, or whatever, find and replace,
the
or whatever.
search, yes, for diversity, I think gender and climate change. They saw any document that had those 3 words. Don't even look at the context. If they pop up in the document, they're automatically rejected, and like 40% of the Fulbrights are gone. But so
Yeah.
I know people will say, well, just change how you describe your project. And it's like, okay, so we're having to try to fudge things and trick things. That's not science either.
Yeah,
Science
that's
is
not
out
science.
in the open, and it's like, this is what we're studying and why. And, I had a colleague that was a good friend of mine that studies giving, I'm trying to think which drug it was. He did one time cocaine, and I can't remember the other one, but the effects on mice. And the thing was always, you're getting funding just to give drugs to mice. It's so
Drugs to
stupid.
mice.
But he's looking at how they affect the receptor sites in the brain to try to understand what's happening, and so we can have medications to treat it. And it's just it's so involved that when you try to explain it to somebody, they don't want to know. I don't even want to know everything my colleagues are doing a lot of times. It's like, it's too deep and detailed, just the gist of it. But also I trust them to put, because they're in a competitive field getting their research funded for a reason. So and it's just hard. This is a hard time, but I guess that was the thing that's on my mind, because we just talked 30 minutes on it when I said I didn't have anything to talk about.
Well, no. That leads kind of, well, I was thinking about the researcher I was describing who got the funding pulled from them, the psychological effect of that. And it's really leading to what I wanted to talk to you about. You had an excellent TikTok video that I saw a couple days ago about burnout. And shameless plug again, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not following John on TikTok, you are missing out. What's your TikTok handle again?
Prof. John. Oh,
Prof. John.
It's at,
I thought it was Brain Dude, or
at brain_dude_.
Yeah. So
Brain
again,
underscore dude underscore. Yeah, brain dude.
there we go. And like I said, if you're listening right now to this podcast and you're not following John, it's a travesty. But I follow John, and so you were talking about burnout, and TikTok is limited to a 1 minute video.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some questions. I'm interested in this topic. So let me start here,
Okay.
just to like for me the ground level because words matter. In a lot, maybe not a lot, but in casual conversation, I hear people talking about being burned out at work,
Mm-hmm.
and what we're talking about right now, I think is different than that. Is that fair to start with?
Um, so what do you call yourself? Science bro? No, what do you say?
It's my
Bro
bro
science,
science.
bro science,
Bro
bro
science is I'm
science.
burned out at work.
Yeah, yeah. So that would sound like it's different, but actually it is. It does relate to.
Okay.
I think those two do tie together. I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because again, so maybe let me ask it a different way because I think that what you were describing, not I think, what I heard you describe on TikTok
Mm-hmm.
is more of an actual psychological effect. Like there is
Yes.
actually something going on in your brain
Mm-hmm.
and so it's different. This is what I was trying to get to. It's different than me just going, "Yeah, work is just really weighing on me this month or this week. We got a big job. We got a whatever. I'm burnt out." That's not what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I didn't even understand it that well. I did some research on it before the TikTok video to understand it. I learned a lot about it, and I
Oh, good.
started it
Okay.
because my niece is in her residency, and I was talking to her. This was a few months ago, but just saying, hey, I know medical school's rigorous, and then now you're in your residency. How's that going? And she just opened up a little bit, telling me about what her and her fellow students face and the burnout and how it affects them so much and some of the different problems they go through, and the suicide rate is really high among medical students, and I didn't realize that.
Oh,
And
really?
it's from a lot of it is from burnout, that overworked, long hours, different, that they expect a lot out of
Hmm.
medical students, and a lot of it is current medical doctors saying, I had to do this. You got to go through what I went through to be a doctor. And so they sleep at the hospital, and she has a baby, like a 2 year old, 1.5 year old, and a husband. And, it's just really difficult for her. And I started thinking about burnout. So I was doing some research on this and found out that the research initially started with healthcare professionals and with
That
educators, like,
tracks.
teachers. And
No.
because they were looking and they were saying that it's when people are in a helping profession, when they're helping other people, is where this idea of burnout comes along. But then as more researchers started researching this, they're going, no, that's not true. It's basically anybody who has a job can face this. And so they started looking into what causes burnout. And I found out that the World Health Organization includes burnout syndrome. They're calling it a syndrome, burnout syndrome, in its international classification of diseases. And they said it's a phenomenon that occurs basically at work, in the workplace, in an
Hmm.
occupational setting. But others have said it, it can be anywhere. But a lot of it is like the symptoms are exhaustion. There's mental distance, so like cynicism and depersonalization. Like all of a sudden, it's like I don't know what I'm doing this for, and I'm kind of this isn't making sense anymore. It's not fulfilling, type of thing. And then fulfillment would be another. So there's some really interesting theories around it, and I don't know if I had just done some research on this. I don't know if you want me to go over a couple of those. They're pretty
That's
interesting.
exactly what I'm looking for. Question
Okay.
first, though, because
Yeah.
when, as always, when you're talking, things pop into my head. But I feel like this syndrome that you're describing, um, and I've tried to be general in my description, but in the military and then in law enforcement, and I think in the corporate world too. That's so trying to narrow it down to that is not fair. There's a mission statement, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
every organization, you have to, what is our mission? And then we have goals and visions, right? You have all these things that as an organization, you're trying to, from the upper level, get everyone in the organization to understand the direction we're supposed to be going.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as for me personally, I join an organization and I know what the mission is. I know what the values are. I know what the goals are. And they align closely, if not exactly, with my values.
Mm-hmm.
But if you work somewhere long enough and then you have a new boss that comes in, right? A
Yeah.
new CEO or a new president, a new boss, almost always when they come in, they have their own stuff that they want to do. And so then we start talking about changing the mission a little bit or changing the values a little bit or whatever. And then you find that in my case that they would no longer align as much as we did before. And I'm not saying that I had this syndrome. I'm just saying that maybe one of the things that can happen is you're in an organization, you align with the values, and then those values change for whatever reason. Can
Mm-hmm.
that contribute to this as well?
Yeah, I think that would be the the depersonalization and the
Okay.
cynicism and kind of the mental distancing yourself from that job. Like things have changed.
Yeah.
The our vision statement has changed and it's different now. So it's kind of you're mentally distanced from it. You join because you believe this one thing, and now things are changing. It's like I don't know that I
Hmm.
believe that much in what we're doing anymore. And so now, as you continue to work, that kind of struggle in your mind can be exhausting. And I think exhaustion is one of the main parts to burnout is mental exhaustion, not physical as much, but it can be physical, but especially the mental and emotional exhaustion from work.
Okay. And that
So
can disrupt sleep.
yeah, it does. It has so many different things. It's sleep. It's yeah. There's a lot of there are a lot of kind of consequences to it. So there's like psychological consequences like sleep, trouble concentrating,
Mm.
memory problems. I have memory problems. I
Oh.
just admitted to anxiety, depression, those types of things. Insomnia, which is sleeping. I think
Okay.
I
Okay.
mentioned like brain fog and irritability in those, low self-esteem, all of those, and it can lead to increased use of tobacco, alcohol, drugs, that type of thing. And then there's a health problem. So people in with burnout syndrome um, tend to get sick more easily and catch things that
Yeah.
come
Immune
around.
systems. Yeah.
But then
Diminished, I
autoimmune
guess you.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it's
Okay.
also things like even like muscle pain, like you start to ache around in different places. It can be from this stomach issues, heart issues, headaches, those types of things. And then the behavioral side of it is you stop wanting to go to work, so you start calling in sick more, and your performance starts to drop. And there's I can't remember the word for it, but instead of absenteeism, it's like you're there, like presenteeism or something like that, where it's you're present, but you might as well be absent because you can't focus to do anything.
Mhm.
You're just standing there at work basically. And so, and then there's a toll on the organization as well.
I was
But
just going to say, like,
yeah,
the organization suffers
hmm
here. If so, wow, there's just so much that
I know there's a
you
lot.
just said. I mean, it's not a documentary, but we watched. My wife and I watched the show The Pit. Noah Wiley's. It's in a hospital.
I've heard of it.
Um,
I haven't seen it.
it's really good, but it's also so the way that it's filmed. It's in an emergency room in Pittsburgh, but
Mm-hmm.
and they're a teaching hospital,
Mm-hmm.
so they have students like what you were describing, med students, and but every episode, which is an hour long, takes place over the course of an hour. So it's an 8 hour or
Mm-hmm.
a 10 hour shift, and there are 10 episodes, and so
Oh wow.
it's like real time.
Mm-hmm.
These things are happening. It's 1 hour, and
Yeah.
but when
But
in watching this, what everybody goes through on this show. I'm just thinking about what you're saying about burnout and just sleeping. Some of them are sleeping at the hospital, and like everything they're going through makes so much more sense now based on
Yeah.
what you're describing.
Well, and I haven't seen the show, but you're saying it's 10 1-hour episodes, but it covers one shift, one 10-hour shift.
One
So
10-hour shift.
you're watching the hour episode and you're probably exhausted going, whew, that, and then you can wait for another week or whatever and see the
Yep,
second
another
hour.
week.
But they're just
But
back to
they're
back.
doing
Like
it.
if you binge
Yeah.
watched it, you would get through one day and then you have to go back the next day and binge watch again for 10 hours, and then go back the next. Yeah, it can be rough.
Yeah.
It's
So,
rough. Yeah.
I was saying organizationally, then, and this may be a different topic. I may be diverting us too far, but like it would be important for organizations, especially in the helping, like teachers, like hospitals, stuff like that, but to understand what we're talking about and then somehow try to address it. I don't know how.
Yeah, but I think, and the point that's been made in research is this is every organization. This is for anybody who
Okay.
offers jobs to people. Burnout is a real possibility, and so organizations need to take steps to try to avoid some of this. Because if you look at just some of the things I mentioned under behavioral changes, like absenteeism, calling in sick, your performance drops. Employees are always leaving, looking for another job, so you're always rehiring new people. They're counterproductive. Sometimes it leads to sabotage. Even when they get very frustrated and angry, they try to sabotage. Workers can. And
Oh,
so as an organization, you want to combat that. So your employees, now you've got a building full, like if you're manufacturing, let's say you have a building full of people that aren't motivated to work or perform really. That's going to impact their quality. Or if it's another type of job, the service, how they interact with the public. There's conflicts and disruptions in the tasks they're doing. It cuts in on productivity. Burnout, one of the things I was going to mention when we talk about the theories behind it, is it spreads kind of like a contagion. There's a contagion theory. So it can spread to others. It can create a toxic environment. And that's financial issues to the company. It's product issue, so many of those things. And once you have an organization has a toxic environment, that's really hard to get rid of. I mean, that
yeah.
is extremely
Yeah.
difficult. Just if you hire a new manager, that can help. But I mean, you're fighting, people have a history with that organization, and you
Yeah.
can't just
In
bring a new
police work,
person.
they're all, they changed the chief. So
Yeah.
we hire a new chief, and that's going to help change the
The
culture of the
culture.
agency. And it doesn't. By and large, it doesn't make a
Yeah,
difference
it's really
because
difficult.
you have a organization full of people who, and again, culture is what you accept every day.
Hmm.
Now imagine you have this toxic culture based on burnout,
Hmm.
and you just bring in a new chief and that'll fix everything. And then the new chief comes in, and guess what? They have a new mission. The mission never changes. We're going to protect and serve, but the wording of it, maybe the vision, the values, some word, and then that actually makes it worse.
Yeah, and then they've added some new expectations or changed some of
Yeah.
the. Yeah. and,
Yeah.
and I've heard people say, when a new chief comes in or a new manager, we'll just wait a little bit. There'll be another new one.
Yeah. In three,
Yeah.
in my experience, chiefs for the job, their lifespan's about 3 to 5 years for it to
Yeah.
be a chief, and
Yeah.
then there's a new one. And then, but it doesn't really matter the industry. It's like why. So let me ask first, what's going on in the brain with this syndrome? Like specifically, why? Because everything you've explained to me is that your brain is built to protect us. It's to do
Hmm.
these things. So what's going on with this?
In a lot of ways, that's what it is doing. Is protecting uh, us. The burnout protects us. It allows us to distance from whatever's causing emotional stress or harm. And so there's some theories behind it, I think, that will help
Okay.
explain that. And I'm not
Okay.
going to go over all of them because there's a lot of theories. And when I was researching this, one of the articles, I'm going to, I should have already had this. I'll see maybe in a minute. I'll see if I can pull it up real quick, the article itself, to give you the name and the author and all of it. There's a really good review article about burnout if a listener wants to know. So I'll try to find that.
Okay, but and I could
But
put, if you give it to me later, I could put that in the notes.
okay.
And far be it for me to argue with you about the brain, because this isn't arguing, but help me understand when you
No.
say the syndrome can cause insomnia, irritability, all of these negative
Mm-hmm,
things.
mm-hmm,
I'm trying to reconcile, because I do understand it's your brain distancing yourself from something,
mm-hmm.
maybe not harmful, but something
That it
bad
sees as harmful. Mm-hmm.
that it sees as harmful. But then the list of negative effects you've been giving me doesn't seem like. Am I making sense where I'm going with
Yeah,
this?
yeah, you do. And the reason I was wanting to give the article is just again because that's the science behind it. You always cite people who've done the work. You always give them the credit for it. So I want to give the person that wrote the review article credit, not make it sound like that I came up with all this or that I just have this, because this was a little bit outside my field. But
Yeah.
the different theories, and I won't go over all of them, but the authors of this paper, I think there's three of them, said that most people in this field agree that these theories aren't arguing against each other as much as there are several options that would explain burnout. So one might work better for healthcare, one might work better, but anyway, and I won't go over all of them because there's several, but the social cognitive theory is one that says that, so think about social means you in a group, and then
Hmm.
cognitive means your brain, you're on channel really. And so it's saying that it focuses more on the personal factors of the worker, and it looks at workers, kind of their view of their self-worth and their self-confidence, because that plays a role in contributing to their burnout. So if they feel their worth has been diminished in some way and they're not very confident, they're more likely to experience burnout at some point. So if you doubt your own ability, it decreases your job satisfaction, and that leads to exhaustion because now you're trying harder and you're not really measuring up to other people and that type of thing. So that's one theory.
Okay.
um, Another one is the social exchange theory. This one makes a little bit more sense to me because it's really straightforward. It's when the effort you put in doesn't match the rewards you get back. So I'm working
Okay.
so hard
Yeah.
and I'm not really getting compensated for that. So that lack of balance eventually wears them down emotionally, which can lead to exhaustion and burnout. So that's another one. There's, let's see, structural theory says that this is when you have stress on the job and you're stressed because whatever reason, either you've got a heavy workload or whatever, but you're stressed, and it happens over time, and you have some coping strategies that are kind of helping you get by, but then those coping strategies just get overwhelmed. They're either ineffective or you just have too much going on. So now you start feeling like a failure, leading to, again, to emotional exhaustion, and that affects your personal health and the organization's performance and all. Just
And so
yeah.
sorry, but when something just occurred to me as well, that we're talking about your stuff at work, calling in sick, being there
Hmm.
but not being, everything about work. I have to assume that this affects the home life as well.
Yeah, you carry your
I
brain
mean, you
home with
brought
you.
up you brought up your niece, right?
Hmm.
Has a young child at home, has a husband at home, and if and well, I'll take the specifics out of it and not say your niece, but if a person is suffering burnout at work, then they go home and they're irritable with their family members, their loved ones. They're not sleeping well, which they're exhausted.
Hmm.
You take that home with you too. So
And
there's like
some,
no escape from this.
there's no escape, and then you have a different set of expectations at home. And so if you aren't meeting those expectations, it's like you give your whole day to that company and you can't give me 1 hour at night. And it's like, and not to be, it's not that that's a bad question to ask. That's a really good question to ask. It's
Yeah.
like, I understand, so on one hand, I'm saying I understand why the person can't, because they're in burnout syndrome, and they just don't have the emotional and mental resources to kind of gather themselves. They've been doing that for so long, and that's the thing. You don't see burnout coming until you hit the kind of the drop point, and it's like, oh, now you're in burnout. If you could see it coming, and you get signs of it, but you're not looking for those signs because you're still functioning. You're still doing your job, and you're still making it, and you still get home and you spend time with the family, and then all of a sudden it just all crashes. And so, yeah, it always affects the home.
So that brings me to the question, um, whether you're leading an organization, whether it's your loved one, at home, a coworker, go down the list. If you're a human being who interacts with other human beings who work,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say that. What are the signs? You've given a bunch, but what are the signs of burnout syndrome I could be looking for? That's number one, and I have a
Mm-hmm.
follow up. But what are the
Okay.
signs?
Well, so I think one of the biggest is just fatigue, being tired a lot, uh, being irritable, like little things bug you and you don't know why. And if you stop and think about it, you go, I don't know why that bugged me. Like normally that doesn't bug me, and all of a sudden that's bugging me. What's going on with that? If your sleep is interrupted a lot, so you have insomnia a lot. Um, well, I've got a. Let me pull this up. So I do have from the research paper what the kind of the listing there's 4 stages of burnout syndrome. So I have each stage. I'll just
Oh,
read it to you quick. First one
please, yeah.
is mild, and that's just mild physical symptoms and slight fatigue. So you're kind of in the mild phase, and the mild physical symptoms could be like sore, achiness or whatever, and just not sleeping well, and then so slight fatigue. Moderate is next, and that includes like insomnia, concentration deficits, detachment, and then that can also be seen a lot at home. Like I'm detached. I'm just kind of here and observing my family or whoever's in my home. I'm kind of observing them, but I'm not participating. Irritability and emotional exhaustion. Those are moderate. Severe. So we're at level 3, and it's already called severe, and that's
Mm-hmm.
increased absenteeism, task aversion. You're trying to figure out how to avoid work, how to avoid the tasks at work, and substance abuse. You might start drinking heavily or drugs, whatever. And then stage 4 is called extreme. So it goes from severe to extreme. And that's when you isolate yourself. You don't want to be around people. You don't want to go to social events. You just want to go be with yourself in a room when you're not at work. Aggressiveness, you can get physical, existential crisis, why are we here type of thing, chronic depression, and suicide attempts.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
those are the signs to look for. So it starts with mild physical symptoms and slight fatigue. That's the mild burnout syndrome.
And so if you are someone who sees some of these signs, what
Mm-hmm.
what do you do about that? Let's say
Yes.
well, let's do this. Let's say you're an organization, you're in management or leadership, and you start to see some signs of this
Mm-hmm.
versus, you're a loved one at home, right? Like, is there anything you
Yeah. So
suggest or,
so like organizations, they can make changes to job descriptions. They can they can
oh,
humanize the work schedule, because work schedules is a big part of this. When you have work shifts that don't match up, or you're forcing people to change work shifts often, or work shifts can be a huge part of burnout. So just humanize that part of it. Um, Use of rewards, so not just financial rewards, but that goes back to, I'm putting a lot in, can I get some things back from this? So just recognition, maybe a park. And I know this doesn't work for, these are like a list of multiple things. um, they can you know kind of have, they can have training sessions that talk about burnout to make you more aware of them. um, uh, uh, what I like coaching and guidance. So those are some of the things they can do. Individuals, what the research shows is that there are a few things like physical exercise, movement, just doing something, get up and moving makes a really big difference. Mindfulness training makes a big difference. Self-assessment, just self-awareness, being aware of yourself, being able to recognize that in yourself, that you feel those changes, just that alone makes a big difference on burnout, because now it's like your back channel is setting off all these alarms and you're just ignoring it and blowing right through it and still doing whatever. And it's setting off more and more alarms. And now it's starting to make you sick and it's keeping you awake. And it's doing all these things to try to say, we're running on empty. We need to stop. We can't keep doing this. This is hurting us. This is harmful. And you just are still ignoring it. But if you say to your back channel, oh, I get it. This is really hard on us. This is something we need to take care. Just that moment of awareness can help so much. And then there's therapy and things like that. But then, just time management, try to leave work at work. And that's so hard now in a digital age. Just one thing the World Health Organization mentioned is that in the digital age, you can't really leave work, because you leave work and you get home and your boss, who, when they see something that they have an idea that might help at work, it just popped into their mind. They just shoot you an email real quick. Hey, when you get back to work, look into da 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 da. And then they send it to you and it's 9 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. And you look at that and you go, how am I going to tackle this problem? And to them, it was a fleeting thought that they sent it to you and just left it. And now you're holding the bag going, how am I going to try to tackle what they're saying? And then you can't sleep. And yeah, it's just, you can't get away from it. Like if they would wait till you walked in the next morning and say, hey, think about this today while you're doing your work. Now you're at the work day, you're thinking through it. So yeah, there's some things like that can be helpful.
Yeah, but it's funny you say that. A couple days ago, we were at dinner with some friends, and well, it was during the week because it was Thursday, but we're at dinner. It's like 6 o'clock at night, and our friend, his phone rings, and he looks at it, and it's a work call, and work ended, a couple hours ago, but in the business they're in, he's got to take that call.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets up and steps away, and his wife kind of goes, they always call like 2 hours after work ends, and he always takes it. But
mm-hmm.
I don't know that he has to take it, but like in the business there, you got to take that call.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're at dinner in the middle of a conversation and you're taking a work call.
And you're finally have some time with others, because social engagement with others is also something that's really important. Instead of isolating yourself, it's connecting with people is so important. You're connecting with people. You're starting to like breathe again, and then it's work. It's like, yeah.
And again, I don't fault him for taking a call or stepping away from the table. I feel bad for him, that he's still working and still engaged when we were in a social setting and having, dinner and that.
Yeah.
So it just, and again, like you just said, is getting back to what can we do is, if you are a boss manager and you have that thought, maybe don't hit send.
Save that.
Make a note and go, hey, in the morning, I'm going to talk to them in the morning. But like you said, it's not like it's evil intentions. It's just, I go, I'm going to fire that email off because I'll forget otherwise, or, it's on my mind right now. And you don't realize that then on the other end, someone is picking up that email, they're reading it, and now it's on their mind.
Yeah.
And whether it's now I can't concentrate through dinner, or I can't sleep, or whatever, that there could be a possible negative effect from that.
Yeah, I used to do that with students before I realized. In my lab, I would have ideas and shoot it to students, and somebody was talking about it and mentioning that they won't do that anymore because of how it affected their student. I was like, never even thought of that. I thought they would be happy to hear of a new idea I had for a research, but yeah. So, I tried not to do it, but I'm afraid I still do it sometimes. I'll have something on my mind and I just shoot out the email. But yeah, we need to all be more cognizant of that and aware. There's a couple of other theories that you're a little bit more mindful and aware. A couple more that I just want to go over real quick. One, and this one is started with research and education, which is, I find interesting because that my wife's a teacher and my daughter, and several of my extended family members are in education. but it's called the demands resources theory. And it's when your burnout happens when your job demands exceed the resources available for you to do that job. So then you have this high workload without a way to solve the problems you're trying to solve because you have insufficient resources. And I just remember, I won't tell the school district, but my wife at one point at one job, because we moved around the country at different times, and she taught in different states, but one of the districts could not afford books for students. So it was up to the teachers to ahead of time prepare lessons, write them out, create their own worksheets, photocopy them, and hand those out to the students day by day. So now she's not only trying to teach them, she's having to develop her own curriculum and put that together, and the amount of time and effort. So teachers would share back and forth, but that's still a tremendous amount of effort because there have already been people that have developed these resources and the district just said we can't afford to buy textbooks. We can't afford to buy any type of resources for students. So teachers, you just got to figure out how to teach them without resources. So that's that demands resource theory. And I can tell you it did lead to chronic fatigue and burnout. A lot of teachers burn out, and a lot of teachers are leaving. I think some of the new teachers, the average is like 3 years and they're gone. And it's just a lot of it's this demand resource theory. But then the last one is one that I find maybe the most interesting just because of the concept behind it, but it's called emotional contagion theory. And it's the idea that burnout results from emotional contagion. So when people that work together, they experience the same things together. So that project that has to be done, the whole team understands that project needs to be done. The whole team's putting in long hours and working on it, and or whatever they're working on. So in their group, they start to it's kind of a form of mimicking each other's emotions, because when one or two of them start to get upset, they all go, yeah, because we're all in this together. So then it's kind of like a group thing. And so it's really common in work groups for those experiences to create feelings of exhaustion for the whole team, or even those that aren't contributing as much. They're exhausted from it, or fear, and it leads to burnout for everybody on the team. So researchers that were looking at this found that what you mentioned earlier about taking it home, that it also happened with couples. If one couple at their work was burnout, they would come home, and then now they're sharing their experiences with their spouse, and that emotional contagion took effect and caused burnout in that other person in their personal relationships. And in fact, the World Health Organization during COVID started referring to parental burnout, because everybody's stuck at home and working from home. And now couples, they were calling it parental burnout because the parents are burnout. They're at home with their children because you're all stuck in a house with COVID, but yet you're still working and trying to meet deadlines. It's just, it's so fascinating. And there's this whole area that I didn't even really realize was there. I'd used it in slang, kind of like a bro science way, like, oh man, I'm really burnt out on this project.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the beginning, what I was trying to get to is I think that we use that term a little bit loosely sometimes. Like, man, I'm just burnt out this week, or I'm burnt out. And I think that if I think hard enough, I'm been guilty of using that term, but there's an actual syndrome. There's actually people out there right now who are suffering from a syndrome that you're describing, from whether it be the work environment, whether it be the demand, all of the things you've listed. And so I just want to be respectful to that idea. Like, you can have a crappy, week at work. And that happens all the time, but we're talking about an actual, psychological thing syndrome that can have syndrome that can have physiological effects. Yes, and in its most extreme cases can lead to attempted suicide or suicide.
Yes.
I want to be respectful to that part.
Right. And I think that talking about it and saying, oh man, I'm burnt out on this, just talking about it is okay, because it raises awareness. And when you say I'm burnt out on this, it's because you're exhausted and maybe you don't have the resources to finish a project. So you can say that. and it just makes everybody more aware that there is such a thing. So then when you hear about a syndrome like this, you can go, oh, but you're right. The danger is it's kind of like the comedian that was talking about when he goes to the hospital and has to fill out the pain chart, and it says from 1 to 10, what are you? And he says, oh man, I'm an 8. And then he said, somebody from upstairs from the broken femur floor comes down saying, who said they were an 8? Like, my femur's broken. That's an 8. So, you run the risk of saying I'm burnout when you're not really yet. And then that
Right.
minimizes somebody who really is burnout. And I think
Yeah.
I know that's the point you're making.
That's
So
what I was trying to get to. Yeah.
we have to be careful with that, but I still think it's good to talk about it and realize that it's a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not trying to police people's language. Hopefully I didn't come across that way to say you can't say you're burnt out at work because you had a bad week or this project's killing you. Totally valid. And you can still call it burnout. I think I just wanted to try to raise awareness that, because I wasn't aware of it. I went through a similar process that, you talked about it on TikTok. Some of the things, even in 1 minute that you brought up, I thought about like, oh, and then I went and started kind of looking at some articles and some information about this to get at least a surface level understanding until I could get more from you, which I did in this 1 hour. But I didn't know about a lot of this.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that I learned it. And hopefully, again, the point of this podcast is hopefully more people can learn it. And what I was really trying to get to is if you listen to the show, you learn about burnout and you see any of these signs from mild to it's extreme.
Yeah. Severe and then extreme.
That, at least we can, the first thing is to recognize that it's happening and then try to figure out some ways to help people get through it.
Yeah. Awareness is big. And then other things like exercise, just mindfulness, those types of things. But awareness is big. And I think anybody listening, not just for yourself to be aware of it, but if you're in an organization and you're in a position that you can influence people, start influencing others, because this, organizations, if they're not working to try to prevent burnout right now, it's probably because they don't have a good understanding of it. Because if you understand it and you realize what it costs your organization, you realize it saves you a lot of money and, the bottom line, plus your culture and your work environment if you deal with things like this. So it might just be that, like me, you might not be aware of. I wasn't aware of it till I started doing a little bit of research on it.
Me too. Well, as always, every week I look at the clock and I'm like, man, I took way too much of John's time. So thank you for all of that. That information was really, really good.
I hope that was helpful. Yep. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. And can you just do me one more favor? One more time, your TikTok handle.
brain_dude_. So I try to keep brain dude on X, TikTok,
all of your stuff, right?
All the stuff, but some of them have underscores and some don't. So it's a little bit hard.
Yeah.
Some were taken.
Somebody out there has brain dude.
Yeah, apparently.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. So look John up on his socials. His TikTok's great, and all of it's great. Follow. You can go to our website. It's johnteachessean.com or about John teaches Sean about his brain.com. Sorry, but our socials.
No, you had it right.
Oh, johnteachessean.com.
.com. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'll fix that. That was a joke. But on our socials, we try to keep it at John Teaches Sean as well. So Blue Sky, X, on TikTok. And you can find us on all of there. Follow us for this show, wherever you're listening. If you can, hit like, hit subscribe, hit follow, whatever it is, wherever you listen to your podcast. I appreciate it. I think we appreciate it. Just like I say every week, I'm still having a great time. I want it to continue. So I learn something every week. Hopefully you do as well. If you know anybody in your life that you think would benefit from listening, please tell them to listen to an episode or two. Hopefully it'll hook them. Because it just keeps this journey moving forward, and it keeps me selfishly. It gives me the ability to keep learning about my brain. So until next week, thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. And we'll see you soon.